Hi, I'm Mrs. Johnson, and you are joining me at the Artsy Fartsy Club. I am so happy you are here, and we are going to start our lesson right away, and hopefully our friends join in. Okay, so last week we worked on our cool cats. So if you want to catch that, go back on the page and you can see that. We also talked about our hot dogs the week before that. Okay, so we learned that red, orange, and yellow make hot dogs. And then we learned that green, blue, and purple make cool cats, right? So now this week, I'm going to teach you a trick to make trees. And I find a lot of times that my students will make what I call lollipop trees. And lollipop trees are just what it sounds like. They'll draw a stick and they'll put a little circle at the end, poof, and that's their tree, right? It looks like a little lollipop. And we can do better trees than that. And there's a special trick that's called Y's and V's makes trees. Okay? So the letter Y plus the letter V, when you add those together, you're making trees, tree branches. So we're going to do it together. I have a simple set of regular crayons. I have the 24 box. You can use any set that you have. I'm using pretty much just the basic colors. So we're going to start out with the brown, okay? And you can see, I hope, that this is my piece of drawing paper on a canvas. And the canvas is just here to hold it upright. Give me a nice little background for you to see what I'm doing, okay? So I'm going to start by drawing the letter Y. So I'm not going all the way down to my bottom because I'm going to leave room for my ground. So I'm going to start up. It's approximately like 2 inches or so. But in the center of my paper, I'm going to make the stick of my letter Y. And then from there, I'm going to make the arms of the Y, right? So like you're saying YMCA. Okay, so now that kind of looks like the outline of the letter Y, and I'm going to lightly color it in. For right now, I'm just doing it light. Okay, so I said we're going to do Y's and V's. So if this is my letter Y, then where am I putting the V's? Well, the V is going to go on the end of my Y. So you know the letter V, right? But I'm not going to just make a stick tree. You know how like we make stick people? I'm not making a stick tree. I want to put some meat and muscle onto that tree. So I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to fill in a thicker letter Y. Same thing here. I could make my letter Y and call it good, but it's kind of hard to see. You don't see that very well. So I'm going to go back and forth, and make my letter V. And you know what's funny is if you cut this off, really, it looks like I have 2-letter Y's again, right? Every time I add a V onto the ends of my Y, I make a new Y. So I could stop here, or I could make another V, and I'm just making them smaller. So the trunk is always my biggest piece, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I could keep doing that until I run out of space on my paper. So I could leave it like that. I could make more. And then this is just a simple one. Now, if you are more advanced, if you're older, you can make your branches different lengths and we can go on and on. But for now, we're keeping this the simple lesson so that my friends can get from stick trees to Y's and V's trees, okay? Now, to create more visual interest and more dimension in my artwork, I am going to go ahead and add other colors into the brown, okay? This is where art starts to get more fun because the more detail that you add in, the more interesting your art is to look at. And oh, I went outside my lines a little bit there. Don't worry, I can fix that. So I'm coming in, putting in some orange. Maybe I'll use a little bit of yellow. And it's just creating some highlights in my tree. The bark's a little bit different of a color there. Or maybe the sunlight hits somewhere. Okay, all over. Don't just do it in one area. And then I could even come in with the black and draw some details. But what I for sure want to do is now go over these colors again with my brown. Okay? Because I don't want it to look like a yellow tree. I just want those to blend in with my browns. And you know what's cool, guys? Now that we have so many crayon sets, I like to use the multicultural crayons sometimes for trees because there's all different choices of brown and you can really make it look interesting. But for now, I'm just using the basic colors that you should have at home as long as you have a crayon set. Okay, blending, blending, blending. Super simple. Okay. Ta-da! There's my basic tree. So I'm going to go ahead and do a spring summertime tree because that's where we're at right in our season. And in my set, I have 3 different greens. Now, chances are you have the basic green. What do they call it in the set? They just call it green. I was going to say Kelly green. You have the basic green. Okay. So you could use yellow instead of a yellow green like I'm going to do, but I'm going to start with my lightest shade of green. And I'm just going to do scribbles or loop-de-loops. I could even do scumbling. So it's kind of like a little less organized of scribbles. And then I'm gonna build onto that. Okay. This is gonna give me a little bit of visual texture going right up to the edge of my paper. It's okay if I go right off my page. Don't get too crazy on mom's table, but you know what you can do? If you have a magic eraser cleaner, that works really good to get crayon off. And my personal favorite is dry paper towel. Don't get it wet because if you're trying to get the wax off, that wax resists water, so that doesn't really help. So get a dry paper towel and you buff it, you rub, rub, rub hard. Use those, what I call your elbow grease, and then that'll get that crayon off your table. Okay, now I'm coming back in with my medium green. Scribble, scribble, scrabble. Remember, you can also scumble, 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 making your scribbles go in all different directions. I'm trying to go quickly so you're not here forever waiting on me. And remember, if you're in the replay crew, that's great because you can pause it, fast forward it, rewind, do whatever you need to keep up with Mrs. Johnson. I have a tendency to talk fast. There we go. Going up to the tippy top of my page. There we go. Get those in. Come back in with some scribble scrabble so it doesn't look all loop-de-loop. I do want some visual texture. I don't want it to look like a pattern though. Trees don't have patterns. They're natural, right? They don't have a real rhyme or reason to them per se. Okay, so now that was my medium green. Now I'm coming in with that classic Kelly green, and we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna kind of think a little bit more of shadows. Okay, so where is the sun not hitting? And the sun is gonna come from the sky, right? Coming down. So the shadow is gonna be more the underneath parts. So I want to make sure that I especially come in with that darker green in the underneath parts, and then I'm going to build from there. Doing some scumbling, scribble, scrabble, scribble, scrabble, so I don't end up with a whole bunch of loop-de-loops. Okay, and I'm going to keep building. So that's nice, but now I can definitely see in the video, it's harder for you to see. And so if somebody's looking at your art from across the room, it will also be visually hard for them to see if you don't have some of those darker colors throughout your tree. But right, again, can you come back in to balance? So if I get more green up here, I want to emphasize the shadow more. I'm going to come back into that shadowy area and make it darker again. And I could keep building that. And when you build on top of what you already did, just like when we did with the tree, excuse me, we added in the brown on top of those yellows and oranges to layer. And when we layer, we're adding more detail. And when we add more detail, that creates more visual interest. And that is what is going to make your art look better. It's just going to look more interesting to look at because there's more things to look at. So the more we come at our paper, the more interesting it will be for the viewer to go, oh, oh, I see what you did there. Making some scribble scrabble lines. They won't know to call it stumbling. You know that because you're an artist, right? You've learned that word. Scumble, scumble. Cool, it's looking good. There we go, guys. We're about ready to move on to the ground. Now, remember I left my tree way up here because I'm going to have ground here. And the ground gets a little bit tricky because we are going to layer in some other things that are visually interesting. So I don't want to go into too much depth in this artwork because this is supposed to be a simple artwork, basic for the purpose of learning how to do our trees, right? We just wanted to learn that Y's and V's make trees. And we have learned that, okay, we've got the letter Y and we added on a V. And if we keep adding on smaller and smaller and smaller V's, we're making a tree. So we reached our goal already, but might as well make it a complete artwork. So I'm going to stick a bush down here. And I'm using that yellow green. I'm going to let it go right off my edge of my paper. And this bush is really close to where the viewer is. It's closer to us than this tree. So now imagine you are walking down a sidewalk and the bush is near the sidewalk, and off in the distance you see this cool tree that you might want to go off the sidewalk and go check out. Okay? And you can do any kind of plant or shape, like maybe I add in, I don't know. We have these like fan type plants here in Florida. Okay. And it doesn't have to be growing from here. Like the ground is down here. So this is actually a stemmed plant that's connected, and then the ground is down here. This is up higher, if that makes sense. And the reason this is up so high is because it's off in the distance. So don't think of the edge of your paper as the ground line. It's not your ground line. Okay, and then I'm going to come back in And I can come in with my darker green and add more details to these objects, okay? But for now, I'm going to start filling in the grass, and I want that grass. The grass does have to meet my tree. I can't have my tree floating into outer space. So one thing I like to do with my grass when I'm coloring in grass is I don't want to go, sometimes we have the tendency, like either we'll draw straight lines or we'll just fill it in like that. That, I don't even know if you guys can see that. But if I do just straight lines and go, this is my grass, or I fill in the space, that's my grass. That's not very visually interesting, right? We remember we were talking about different textures and stuff. So instead of doing straight lines, I like to do it at diagonals. And I come back and forth, and back and forth. And I'm going to fill that in. Now I'm not going to scribble scrabble into my plants. That might be sad, but there we go. We're getting there. And there's grass still off in the distance, so it's peeking up. My plant isn't as tall as grass is gonna, well, as the distance is visually. All right, here we go. We're starting to get to our tree. So that's the minimum of our horizon line. That's the minimum area where our sky is going to meet the ground. Okay? It has to at least, the grass has to at least touch my tree. Now I could make the grass, the distance, go all the way up here. And that could be more grass like a valley going off, off, off into the distance. But the requirement is that I have to have my grass up to my tree. I can't have a tree floating into outer space. Okay. So now I can come back in and I can add some texture with my dark green onto my bush. I could even draw leaf shapes. Okay. Whatever floats my boat here. And I can always, remember, I can come back in and add other colors to make it a little more visually interesting. Can you see? I hope my head's not blocking your view. Okay, so basic, simple drawing. Now, if I want, I could make my drawing go up, like I said, off into the distance, but I'm going to keep it here. We're keeping this drawing simple, and we'll do perspective for another day. Okay, that's a whole other lesson, and that's a little bit more advanced. We're doing simple. I'm going to create some flowers. Okay, get some flowers going on here. Simple, simple, simple. All right, I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to make this a tulip type shape. just kind of a curved line and a curved line, and then filling it in. I'm going to change my color. I can use pink, purple, whatever. Make this more like a, what's that called? Like a delphinium, sort of. Imagine. Keeping it simple shapes. We're not trying to make this like high school art. This is our simple art. Anyone can do it. If you practice this and you build on this, you can start adding more and more details, and you're going to become a more confident and better artist as you go. Okay? And so just to review really quick, we did Y's and V's to make trees. So we made our tree, and then we came in and we added in detail. So I can even come back in with my medium green and add some highlights into my grass, and that's going to be a little more interesting to look at. I could add in a bit of brown for spots of dirt. Okay, whatever. Aha! You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull out my handy dandy white crayon. And usually I don't let my kids use white unless it's supposed to be white. The object is supposed to be white. A lot of times I'll even say they can't use a white crayon because the paper is already white, so they could just leave it white. But we're doing a wax resistant a little bit. So I am going to use my white crayon. And what a wax resist is that it resists the paint. Wax is not water soluble. It does not blend in water. It will not wash away. Okay. I might even do one up here in the tree far away. Okay. Hopefully those turned out. It's hard to do sideways. So the wax now is on my paper. It's transferred. This is a wax crayon, and anywhere that I see color is now wax crayon on the paper. And wax can be used as like a sealant. It is sealing in the paper. The paper cannot get wet there. It is covered by that wax. So I'm taking a watercolor brush, and I'm going to just get my paper wet. Okay, so I can do what we call a wet on wet technique. So even though I'm getting my paper all the way wet everywhere, where is it not wet? Oops. It's not wet where that wax is, right? Okay, I'm getting a little bit of watercolor paint on my brush. I'm using kind of a light blue to start. And I am just going to go right on top of everything I did there. It's just going to go right over. And then I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit, whoop, a little too much, I think there. A little bit darker blue. And unfortunately, my art is hanging up, right? So it will drip. Usually I would do this flat on a table, just so you know. All right. And I might even do another little bit darker blue as I go up. A little bit darker there. And blend, blend, blend. Okay, you guys see the magic happening here? So wherever I had that crayon, the white crayon, it will start to resist that water, okay? And it's going to start to make it pull away from that area. Sadly, I'm dripping all over the place because it's upright and it's watercolors and gravity, you know? Oh, this will make a cool technique. You can even take a little paper towel and lift your paint. This will allow me to show you my finished art right away. Do, 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 do. Okay. What drips? I don't know what you're talking about. It was always like this the whole time. Boop. Okay. And that's it. Ta-da! We did Y's and V's makes trees. And now you know how to make a tree that looks a little bit more like a tree versus a lollipop, right? Versus a stick. So no more single lines with a circle on top. You're better than that. You are an artist. You're amazing. You've followed along and you've done such a great job. I know it. And if you would like to share your art with me, I would love to see it. So make sure that you can email it to me at artsyfartsyclubhq@gmail.com, or you can even message it to me on Facebook, or even message to me on Instagram as artsyfartsy_club. I am so happy you are here with me today. Again, my name is Mrs. Johnson. I love you so much. Thank you so much for coming and staying all the way to the end. And now, did you know you are officially a member of the Artsy Fartsy Club? Yay! Awesome. You're amazing. And I hope you join me again next Wednesday on Facebook live at 11 a.m. But don't forget, you always can watch the replays, and that's okay too. In fact, if you did this with me, do it again. Go ahead, catch the replay, and you can rewind, pause, change it, make it a new, different way, and I would be so happy to see what you did. Thank you again so much for joining me, and don't forget, till next time, be artastic.